Hey there.
Hello.
I hear you want to complain, and that's my favorite.
Well, yeah, I was thinking about this. So I got, a letter. I probably got an email from them too, from our internet provider saying you're like, your trial, your introductory period is up, right? Like
Oh, gosh.
your good rate thing, or it's about to be up or something.
Did it also come attached to like a decapitated horse head or something?
Well, it's so annoying, like, because you're going to have to start paying more, or you have to call them up and like threaten and say, like, we're going to leave. We're going to go get a different one, right?
Yeah. I hate the threatening thing. I've done that before with Adobe products because they'll always give you an extension if you do it. That's a pro tip out there.
It definitely works. Well, it just made me think that, I think maybe we're all seeing the trial period, the promotional rate time of capitalism coming to a close.
Yeah, I like that. Yeah, we tried it. We gave it a shot. It's, maybe it was our partner for a while, but, now it's time to part ways.
I don't know. The bargain for a long time has been like, put up with all the bullshit, right? Put up with essentially a dictatorial type government, but by the bourgeoisie. And we'll make sure that at least you get cheap treats fast. But now everything's harder to get and it costs more. Everyone's paid less. Everything takes longer. You're worked harder. I mean, everything just like sucks more.
Yeah, I saw this illustration from like the Gilded Age. Have you seen it where it's like wages and rent and it's like squeezing the guy in the middle?
Yes, yeah.
Yeah, and like the tweet is
big
like,
turning wheels.
I thought I wouldn't relate to the 1700s, but here we go.
I don't know. I think it just made me think like, okay, what would be the comparison to the different actions you can take on that sort of thing? Internet, I guess, is pretty necessary. Like you have to have it, right? The thing that obviously would not work is just calling them up and asking them nicely, could you please just keep the promotional rate?
That's the equivalent of voting.
That's liberalism, yeah.
Just vote.
Yeah, just ask them and they'll change things because it's good.
Because that's always worked.
There's the threatening thing, right? And that's, I mean, what is that? That's like kind of social democracy or like, well, it's more like labor action and stuff.
I was gonna say,
right?
yeah, that feels a little more like a strike to me. Like you're threatening to quit. You're gonna do a walkout. Except I feel like with that, like I fold pretty easily on those things. Like if they gave me 3 months free, I'm like, yeah, sure, I'm in.
Well, that is sort of then if you're thinking that's labor action in terms of just getting a better contract or getting concessions. Like the New Deal or something. A big part of that was fear on the part of the ruling classes that if they didn't do something worse was going to happen to them.
That's true.
And then, of course, there's like getting together with your friends and going and taking over and running the internet service provider collectively. That's the other solution.
Which is insane. And I was thinking too, I was like, well, could you make your own? I'm like, no, you got to get a space satellite up there. There's a lot of things in the way.
Yeah, I don't know how. I would have to reappropriate.
Yeah, is that how internet works? I don't know.
I'm pretty sure not.
God dang it.
There is satellite internet, I think, for obscure areas, maybe.
Oh, okay. Well, listeners, pretend I just said exactly how internet works.
Yeah, you're our tech correspondent.
Insert internet jargon here.
So, yeah, that's my weekly complaint.
I feel ya.
I'm not going to start a segment like that. That would be annoying. You guys don't need to hear that.
We always end up there anyway, so we don't need to sandwich it necessarily in sadness.
Sure. Okay, let's get into today's lesson.
Let's do it. Who are we talking about? What are we talking about?
Today, we are going to talk about Socialist Yugoslavia.
Okay, this is that place I had to look up on a map last week.
Yeah, that one. It's okay. It's not around anymore, so that's fine for you to have to look it up. It's not embarrassing.
Okay.
But we're going to actually take this in 2 parts, so we're just going to do episode 1 here.
Great. Do we have a cutoff point already in mind?
We do, yeah. In the two-part series, we're going to lay out a very brief introduction to the very complex history of Socialist Yugoslavia, which covers overall the time period between 1918, just after World War I, to its breakup in 1992.
Okay, great.
Part 1, so today we're going to cover from the formation of the Kingdom of Yugoslavia in 1918 to the beginning of the Informbiro period in the late 1940s.
All right. Didn't know it was going to do either of those systems of government, so let's get into it.
Part 2, we'll pick up that story and then go to its disintegration in 1992. Our main goals overall are just to cover the basics because, as we mentioned, as you were saying, you know, we're like barely taught or not taught this in American schools.
I know. So we are just old enough to have like seen this on a map. I mean, me technically not. I remember it was in the Animaniac song. That's
Oh, really? The
yeah,
countries of the world one?
I'm pretty sure they have Yugoslavia in it.
But yeah, like we're taught that during the Cold War, you know, there were the Western U.S. aligned countries. They were cool. They did all the cool capitalist things. They were like different and unique from each other. But then you had like the Soviet aligned countries. They all followed the same drab and abusive Soviet style system. You know, it was just communism. It was bad.
Everything was gray. Everyone was hungry.
Yet this idea of the Iron Curtain, if you look at those people, it was just bad. They just suffered. And I don't know. I want this series and our show more broadly. I think we do this as kind of pushback on that Soviet bloc narrative because we've talked about, right, the myths of the Soviet Union, but also like about all these different socialist countries, Vietnam and Cuba and Spain, Burkina Faso, all these different places that implemented socialism in their own way to fit the needs of their people. And so this is going to be kind of in that vein of like, well, how did Yugoslavia do it? You know?
Yeah, I like that idea of like localized socialism. Maybe that's just kind of my ANCOM stripe showing. But yeah, I mean, it makes sense that you'd have to adjust an ideology for your people.
Yeah, and I think that's accepted, like, well, at least it's accepted, you know, Marxist-Leninist practice and Marxist-Leninist Maoism, and really most stripes of Marxism in general, and probably ANCOM and everything else, would accept that, like, how socialism is practiced in its specifics, like, it has to be applied a certain way. Like, that's the whole idea behind, like, Marxist-Leninism or whatever is that it's kind of an improvement on Marxist theory in terms of putting it in practice in the revolution conditions of Russia. And like Maoism, same way in China, you had Mao Zedong thought of like how it was applied there, and it adds some things, you know, it makes some changes, and it's controversial. People are like either on board or they're not, or whatever, like in any of these different stripes. But I don't know, I'm kind of on board with there being these different varieties, these different approaches given the situation.
Yeah, because I mean, you know, you have regions where religion is a much more important factor. You have regions where like climate is going to be way more important, and like agriculture and that stuff. Like it just makes practical sense to adjust even on like a very base sense of like, okay, what are we going to produce? Like it just makes sense to adjust to your area.
Yeah, for sure. So yeah, like we said, it does get thorny. Like eventually, I think it'll be next episode, we'll get more into it in terms of Yugoslavia's like particular stripe of socialism and like this kind of big argument among communists of like, is it for real? You know, is it good? That'll be more of a part 2 thing, but we'll kind of get the setup for that today. Okay,
questions. I only know a smattering of this, and some of it came from like a listener email that referenced like some bad stuff happening. Is that happening this episode or next episode?
There will be some bad stuff happening this episode.
This episode, it's just really lighthearted. It's a chill one. It's a beach episode.
Yeah, this is the school festival episode
of the anime.
Yeah.
I was going to say a spa episode. That's also a popular one.
Yeah, beach episode, spa episode.
Okay, I didn't want us to get in a situation where someone comments like, you didn't even cover, you know, this massacre or whatever.
Oh, so we won't cover every detail, but I do try to like add in some of that. So I don't get into too many of the bloody details, but
Okay. Just I don't know. People get really mad if you leave out how many people got killed.
I mean, well, yeah. They should get mad if we kind of just allied things, right? If we're just
Yeah.
Everything was great. Stalin did nothing wrong. Like, yeah, okay.
But like, we don't do that.
Yeah. But if you do want like the Crimes of Communism podcast, I think is a different one.
I'm sure there are plenty.
Yeah. So let's start at the beginning. Yugoslavia before World War II. The Kingdom of Yugoslavia was kind of like a nation-building project after World War I. You have these different nations, kingdoms, Serbia, Croatia, Slovenia, Montenegro, Macedonia, and Bosnia and Herzegovina, which is that those two are all one. Bosnia and Herzegovina is the thing.
Are they still all one?
They are still one, yes.
Okay.
The whole thing was very, obviously cobbling these nations together, very multinational. But what it was appealing to was a common South Slavic heritage. This was an era of romantic nationalism.
Yeah, we
so
talked
people
about that.
people are saying, well, we need to have a nation for these people. And they had that in terms of like, well, we have a nation for Serbs, we have a nation for Croats and this sort of thing. But they kind of wanted to they thought that this was a lot of people, mostly intellectuals, were advancing the idea that there was a South Slavic kind of language group and people.
Okay. Almost like a race?
Sort of as a race, but then we'll see later that people definitely disagreed that, they were different races. There's a lot of what they...
It's like an ethnic group kind of thing, I guess. Yeah.
Like we're all... it's one parallel that comes to mind. It's not a perfect one, but like Pan-Americanism in terms of like South America and Simón Bolívar, like trying to unite everyone.
Yeah, the idea of uniting all of Latin America. Okay.
Yeah. And there's a lot, there's more than just that example, but that's kind of what they were doing. And it's pieced together from the ashes of the Austro-Hungarian Empire.
Oh, because they got all fucked up in World War I, right? With like Franz Ferdinand and all that shit.
Yeah, they got dismembered, so they were,
Extremely good summary, by the way.
Yeah.
A+ essay.
That was, too simplified, but we'll count it. It's fine. It's not the topic of this essay, so it's okay.
It's, go to Wikipedia.
Yes.
I can't do everything for you.
Don't go to Wikipedia. It'll take you forever, and you'll read about things for hours if you're anything like me. So...
Welcome back. It's been a week.
Yeah. So that was kind of where the Kingdom of Yugoslavia came from. So we're talking 1918. That's not our main topic, though. I just wanted to bring them up as the environment in which the Communist Party and their friends and everything get started.
Yeah, I mean, straight from king to communist. That's quite a turn.
Well, yeah, they, it's a constitutional... like parliamentary thing. So they do have like political parties starting. And of course you start seeing social democratic parties or communist parties forming. The Bolshevik party starts out as like the Russian Social Democratic Labor Party. That was like the original name from the what would become the Communist Party in Germany to like the Social Democrat was like the OG thing. So not to say they're soft or anything.
No, but I think that's interesting because that happened in last week's episode in Japan, too. Like, as soon as you start opening the door for parties, like, weird how communist parties keep popping up. It's almost like people like them.
I mean, you could come to that conclusion based on the evidence.
But, communism is often painted as this, like, totalitarian, dreary thing that no one would ever vote for. It's like, no, everyone's like on board.
But somehow it gets popular. Don't know.
Weird.
So all these different, they form these regional communist parties, so Social Democratic Party of Serbia and all these, each area gets theirs. And eventually these kind of messily, it's a difficult process that I don't want to get into, but they merge into the Socialist Labor Party of Yugoslavia, parentheses communist.
I like that name.
Well, they reworked it eventually. And so in 1920, they renamed themselves to the Communist Party of Yugoslavia.
I'm picturing like a piece of paper with lots of like scratch outs and like the little carrot and, like to insert
Yeah,
new
someone's
words.
like, we got to put communist in parentheses there, otherwise they don't know who we are.
Someone threatened to leave over that, and they're like, fucking fine. It's in parentheses, though.
Then that rename was actually so that they could gain entry into the Comintern, the international organization, remember, that Soviet Russia had set up.
They lack a unified name.
Yeah, you gotta get your branding right,
They are kind of like corporate headquarters or something, like, oh, I'm sorry, you don't have the right color set
right
for
red,
our logo.
right? Yeah, like,
Yeah,
so
that's not Coca-Cola red.
what do you think if you were going to name the communist red, which I don't know if there's really one or if they all use different shades, but what would what would you call it?
Oh, that's a good question. You could go really nasty with it and be like blood of the people or something.
Fascist blood red.
No. I was thinking more like the heartbeat of the people.
Okay,
like
good
Les Mis
blood.
or something.
Yeah.
Sorry, I'm such a fucking geek.
Red. What is that? What are they saying?
The blood of angry men.
There you go. Yeah. Angry men blood.
Angry man blood. No, that sounds like I'm murdering angry men, which is fine. Ooh, what if it's comrade?
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 Oh no.
Okay.
That's pretty good.
It's a draft. We can scratch it out and put communist in parentheses.
Comrade, communist. Okay. So that's the time period we're looking at, right after World War I. So right after the Russian Revolution and all that, and right when the Comintern is established and everything, these guys are coming onto the scene. And this was when we first see on the historical stage a very interesting fellow named Josip Broz Tito.
All right. What's his deal?
So Tito is actually a nickname, but it's what people call him. He was just Josip Broz, but then...
Oh, like it's not even related to his name?
No, it was like a pen name, war name sort of thing.
I gotcha. A nom de guerre.
Yeah. And then it became his for real title, basically.
I think Dummy Thick would be my nom de guerre.
It's an interesting one.
Yeah, I think it'd be great.
I don't know what mine would be. I'd have to give it more thought.
Yeah. Let me know when you got it.
So Tito, a little bit about his background to get him to this point. He grew up working class. It seems like his father did inherit an estate, but failed miserably at it immediately. Tito ends up being raised by other family, and he works in union jobs at factories and stuff and gets involved in several strikes. In 1913, he starts his compulsory 2 years in the Austro-Hungarian army.
Not cool.
Which, unfortunately, that lined up with World War I, so he ends up in that and gets captured by Russia as a POW.
Bummer.
Yeah, well, it turns out to be kind of cool because he's there when the February Revolution breaks out.
So he's just like, I like this.
Yeah, he's able to leave his POW camp and join in the July Days uprising.
Whoa.
And he gets arrested by the provisional government for that, but eventually he escapes because, remember, everyone just, hops off the train there. Everyone just gets out.
Oh, yeah, they did a
easily.
shitty job of arresting people.
Yeah, you could just, leave on the way to exile or whatever.
Fantastic.
Somehow they overthrew that government. He ends up fighting in the Russian Civil War, in the Red Guards, he's there.
I was going to make a Fiddler on the Roof joke.
I won't get it, but it's fine. I'm uncultured.
He's which one? What's his name? I don't know. The second boy who courts the second daughter in Fiddler on the Roof. He joins the Red Army. He's cool.
Ah, well, he also courted someone there and moved back home to Yugoslavia in 1920 with his new wife and joined the Communist Party. And he'll be an important player as we go forward. So
Okay, keep an eye on him.
Yes. So the party did pretty well. In the 1920 election, they got 58 out of the 419 seats that were there. That's well enough to get fourth place.
Yeah, that's not bad.
And they were doing especially well in the cities. But nothing really gets your enemies hating you more than success. And the government was definitely not happy with their good performance. So when they led a minor strike, it got brutally crushed by the army, and the government started cracking down on them.
Fuck. Okay, real quick. You said it was 48 out of how many?
58 out of 419.
And imagine if we had a 5. You know, like 5 senators who were communists. Like, that means, like, have we ever had one?
Communist senator. Best we can do is Bernie, you know? Like,
Yeah, that's not even it. Like,
we've had socialists, but I think that I don't know if I don't know our socialist history well enough to know if we've had any in Congress. I know that we had some in the New York like state legislature, and they got dramatically like thrown out or something. Like they refused to seat them or something like that.
classy. Okay, I don't know. Sometimes I just imagine, like, what if we have that? That'd be crazy. It'd be crazy even historically, like that happened.
Yep.
Okay, continue.
Wild country. On July 21st, 1920, someone associated with the Communist Party in Yugoslavia assassinated a government official, Interior Minister Milorad Draksevich.
Whoops.
And the government, they got mad. And so they banned the party. Yugoslav State Security Act of 1921. They annulled their seats in the assembly. They just kicked them out.
Okay.
And started putting in the secret police to infiltrate their activities.
Shit. Okay. Wait, you said they're cracking down. This is the crackdown? They didn't crack down before someone got assassinated?
They crushed like the strike.
The strike.
But they hadn't really... they started like shutting down newspapers and stuff. Like they were doing things, but they hadn't officially banned them yet. This is when they're like, okay, gloves off, let's go. And that's important to keep in mind. Like it does, like we were saying about the poor representation we have in this bourgeois legislature. You know, that's annoying and stuff. And the government does kind of harass leftists and things, but it could still get like a lot worse. And I think the bigger thing there is not just to be like, oh, well, it's, that's good.
It's great here.
It's, the bigger thing is like, no. It could get a lot worse, and it would if they thought that they needed to. Like, we had to be prepared for that stuff.
That's true, yeah.
So at that point, the party had to go underground.
Classic.
Yeah, well, it's not good for membership,
Traditionally, no.
Yeah. It's hard enough to get people to, like, show up to perfectly legal meetings, let alone, hey, you might go to jail.
But we have some books, maybe some t-shirts.
We got cool pins.
I'll do anything for a pin.
They, so their membership suffers, and they stay outlawed and underground until the outbreak of World War II. So it's a long period, that's like 20 years that they're just on the outs. There's a lot of infighting at this time between left and right factions and some changing of directions. Like in 1933, they were all about advocating like breaking up the Kingdom of Yugoslavia. Like we should be different nations doing our own thing. But then eventually they changed that to saying, no, we got to unite. We got to form a popular front because like by then Nazi Germany and fascism and stuff were rising. So a little bit of, changing your tune for different times. Like I said, the complicated faction stuff and leadership struggles. Also, when the Great Purge happened in the Soviet Union, the Communist Party of Yugoslavia was really closely tied to them. I mean, they were like really down with the international, coordination of the parties.
Because, geographically, they're close.
Yes, yeah. So they were definitely, always looking to the Comintern for directions and stuff and wanting to do the right thing by the party internationally. But when the Great Purge happened, it didn't go well for them. Their party leader, Milan Gorkic, was accused of being a British spy.
Ooh.
And was executed by the NKVD.
NKVD, is that like pre-KGB?
Yes, yeah. So that's the secret police they had before that.
Okay, gotcha.
And that is when Tito ends up coming to power as leader of the party there. He's like the replacement guy.
Damn, okay, don't fuck up.
Yeah, and there's various speculation, and I really don't know how to weigh in on it. I haven't seen enough sources.
Ooh, like conspiracy?
Yeah, so people are like, oh, Tito like probably ratted him out to the NKVD or set him up or something. But then other people say like, I don't know if he would do that. Like, we don't really see, a lot of evidence. And then it's like, well, is this even reliable people or what? So
unclear.
Lots of other party members end up getting purged as well. Now, this is just a little side. This is not literally putting everyone in a blender. It doesn't necessarily mean like imprisoned or even executed. It can just mean like getting kicked out of the party. But like, it's still shitty. I mean,
oh yeah.
That even the lowest form of it, but that's lots of people died also in the Great Purge. So it's not to say it's bloodless either. Like, people get executed without trials. People get executed with trials that aren't fair. People get executed with regular trials. Like, I mean, there's a spectrum, and I guess it just kind of goes from like bad to worse. But it's definitely not, bajillion people, crushed to death by communism. But anyway, bad stuff. Then we get to World War II, which is also bad.
I imagine so. I didn't think they were fucking thriving.
Not a lot of people were having fun at that time, yeah. So in World War II, Yugoslavia, the kingdom was trying to chart a neutral course between the Axis and the Allies for a while. But it didn't work. Basically, the Axis was, taking over Europe. And Britain was really like the only country there not, getting dominated. And so Yugoslavia says, okay, well, we're going to join the Axis then. They're too strong,
Oh, shit.
So in 1941, they join the alliance with them. And some of the military guys in Yugoslavia didn't like this. And they were also encouraged by the British, like, to secretly, kind of under the table, to do a coup against their Prince Regent, a guy named Paul. And they overthrow him. But Germany is pretty upset about that because they just signed an alliance with this country.
Yeah.
And now they're doing coups and trying to side with the British, so they invade.
Oh, no. Okay.
It goes pretty easily for them. They take over the place in 10 days.
That's pretty easy for an invasion. Yeah.
Yeah. And then the next day, they start cutting the place up. They cut up Yugoslavia, annexing parts of it, directly occupying other parts of it, and also creating a fascist puppet state called the Independent State of Croatia.
Okay. Hold on. I want to look up how big Yugoslavia is relative to other places in Europe at the time. All right. So we're looking at a little fatter than Italy, maybe?
Yeah.
This is a thick Italy.
There you go.
Gotcha.
This independent state of Croatia was pretty bad.
It sounds like it.
It was governed by a party or group called the Ustaše, who were racist, Catholic, Croat supremacists. Like,
Oof.
Croat people were better than everyone else is kind of what they were. They were like doing Nazi stuff, but for Croatia, basically.
That's not great.
And yeah, during World War II, they start doing a full-on genocide with like concentration camps and all that.
Fuck.
The fourth largest concentration camp in Europe, Jasenovac, what was there where hundreds of thousands of people were killed.
Holy shit. Okay.
Yeah, so they start killing Serbs, Jews, and Roma people as well.
Oh, yeah.
And yeah, it's really horrible. And the leader of these guys was a guy named Ante Pavelic, who I think we got a listener email that kind of got into a little bit of this kind of divide between his group and the group that Tito will form.
Yeah. Do you want me to go ahead and read that?
Sure, yeah.
This is from Adrian, and he kind of shares a personal family history about Yugoslavia. He says, as an Australian with parents who grew up in the former Yugoslavia, specifically Croatia, the topic of Tito is generally not discussed in our house. My mother's family fought with Tito's partisans during World War II and generally regard him as a hero of the Yugoslav people. We had pictures of Tito in our house. My father's family were Croatian nationalists who fought alongside the forces of Pavelic. Not a good dude, in parentheses, which, yeah, I agree. Anyway, my dad regards Tito as a cruel communist dictator who brought ruin to his beloved Croatia. My mother believes that Tito united the people and forged his own brand of socialism, keeping the country stable for decades. How they met and married is puzzling to me.
I would agree. That's wild.
Yeah, can you imagine like crazier origin stories for your parents? So yeah, he says that like personally he likes Tito and, you know, sends us an article about him as well, and just kind of wants to hear our thoughts about it. But yeah, I mean, one side supported the Nazis. I think I know which side I'm on. It's not that one.
Yeah. Now to say fought alongside the forces of Ante Pavlich, that's not good. There are different degrees of that, and we'll get into it, I guess. It doesn't necessarily mean, I guess, that the person always fought for them or fought like, you know, directly for the government or whatever. We'll get into it, but that's, yeah, quite the divide. So
Yeah, for real. That's very dramatic.
let's talk about what Yugoslavia did, having been invaded and cut up into different, getting annexed and stuff like that, getting occupied, and also having this terrible government imposed upon them. They start a resistance, and not like a feckless hashtag resistance stuff.
They all just wear a shirt that says resist. It works.
Yeah, they say fascist man bad, and they tweet about it, and that's it.
Remember when people were wearing safety pins?
No, what?
That was a thing.
Oh, gosh.
It was right after Trump got elected.
Well, this was a lot cooler. So there's different degrees of it, though, in terms of coolness. Like, there's some parts that are, like, they quickly go to not even cool.
Oh, okay.
One group involved in the initial days in the resistance was a monarchist/Serbian nationalist group called the Chetniks.
Interesting.
Later in Yugoslav history, this ends up being like a slur, I want to say, or like at least a rude thing to say about someone to, like, you know, say, oh, you suck, you're like this terrible Serbian.
Ooh, okay.
But back then, it's specifically referring to this group. Sometimes anti-communists try to portray them as like the genuine good patriotic freedom fighters, you know, the real good resistors to the Nazis. But they were really quite bad. Not only were they from the very beginning like advocating creating an ethnically homogenous greater Serbia, but they also increasingly throughout the war, but not like very late in the war, we're talking like pretty early on, and then increasingly from there, start collaborating with the Axis occupation to try to get their own stuff done, which involves a lot of ethnic cleansing.
Fuck. Okay, yeah, I don't like these people.
Yeah, so they start out like, at least they do some battles against the Axis, and they do, like, even in some of those battles, team up with the partisans, who we'll get to in a bit, and so fight on the same side, like early on. But I think quickly they kind of get opportunistic and just start saying,
And they're like,
yeah,
you know, I would really love some more ethnic cleansing.
yeah, they're mainly working for their own project, and if they have to work with the Axis to do that, they did.
Wait, did they want to cleanse different people than the other guys?
Yes.
Okay.
So the other guys, the Croatian guys were like getting rid of Serbs, and the Serbian, these guys were, let me pull this up. They have a Wikipedia article called Chetnik War Crimes in World War II.
That's a good start.
Yeah. They were directing theirs against the non-Serb population, so mainly Muslims and Croats.
Okay, not great.
So, yeah, you had multiple groups trying to kill each other. And that's, okay, so we said that Chetnik becomes like a kind of a bad thing later. The same thing with the Ustaše, that also becomes like something that people will say about Croat people in like in a derogatory way. Again, we're just referring to the historical groups here.
Like, people use these historical terms as slurs, be like, you're just like those ethnic cleansing jerks.
Right, yeah.
Okay.
So, but the real cool group that we want to focus on, the actual anti-fascists here that are fighting back against the Axis, were the National Liberation Army and Partisan Detachments of Yugoslavia, aka the Yugoslav Partisans.
Okay, why are they called partisans?
Partisan actually just refers to, is like a military term for like irregular military, resistance forces, guerrilla forces, acting against like an occupying power, insurgents.
Gotcha.
And it actually goes way back before this. So,
Okay.
but they were called the Yugoslav Partisans. And they were led by Tito.
He's back.
He's back. He's, at this point, in charge of the party and in charge of the partisans. They were set up by the Communist Party, which had been trying to, since before the war, unite all the left groups, to do stuff, to resist against fascism. Mm-hmm. And then when World War II breaks out, they set up the Unitary National Liberation Front to kind of put all these anti-fascist leftist groups together to try to free their country.
Damn, there's one thing commies are good at, and it's kicking Nazi ass.
Hell yeah.
You'd think that'd give us more of a pass than it does, but you'd be surprised.
People are not very appreciative of that because then they say, "Oh, you're just as bad."
You're just as bad. Okay.
Yeah. The partisans are then the armed wing of that Unitary National Liberation Front thing. So whereas the Chetniks were really right wing and, doing ethnic cleansing things, the partisans wanted a multi-ethnic federal Yugoslavia. So they wanted there to be like
federated zones or whatever with the different groups.
Mm-hmm. So like kind of nations for each group, each ethnic group, or basically following the historic borders, with equal rights for all these different ethnic groups and equal like representation and all this sorts of stuff.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking of because it is such an ethnically diverse group that clearly has some tensions. A federated option might make the most sense.
Yeah, so they wanted to do the federation, except maybe less spacey.
Oh.
While it was technically a big tent group of like any sort of leftist or even just kind of progressive groups, it was like the leadership was like wholly led by the Communist Party. Yeah, they were still doing democratic centralism. Like they weren't about letting bourgeois people take over it. So anyway, the war happens and the partisans lead a very bloody armed resistance against the Axis occupation. It is brutal and both sides do brutality. It's war.
It's war.
The partisans certainly do their fair share. I mean, you're fighting the Axis, so you really can't do like your fair share. They do more than you 100%, but
yeah.
They do a lot of unsavory stuff to try to liberate their country. They at the end of the war, there are some retributive massacres of people, saying, "Oh, these people were collaborators" or what have you. And I mean, they kill people.
I mean, they're Nazis.
Or they worked with Nazis, or it's not always like literal SS, like.
Yeah, that's true. There's degrees.
And there's also instances of revolutionary terror in places that they do liberate. It's a lot smaller scale than the like actually trying to do genocide efforts of their enemies, Yeah. Again, you're really never going to out genocide, when you're fighting the Nazis, that's pretty hard to do.
They're pretty good at that.
They do like executions and stuff and go after like class enemies and things. And there's some what they themselves call mistakes afterward. They say we made leftist errors in like places that they liberated or whatever, and like tried to do, too much crazy stuff too fast and pissed people off, that sort of thing. Like we mentioned up top, it did happen. We don't want to deny any of that stuff. There it was. But eventually the partisans, with the help of the Allies, especially the Red Army, are victorious.
Nice.
It is, though, I do want to emphasize they do have help, but like this is mostly them. Like they are the ones leading the resistance the whole way through the war, and that's going to come into play later.
Okay.
But during the course of the war, they end up setting up a provisional government called Democratic Federal Yugoslavia.
Okay.
Which is going to be like a federation of 6 equal republics. So the ones we mentioned before.
That sounds great.
And Tito was at its head. They deliberately left it that way, Democratic Federal, instead of like referencing to anything like a republic or a kingdom, because there was a big argument, Tito and the partisans don't want to do a kingdom, but like the British want to push them to bring back, and they're a big, allied power. They want to push them to bring back their king in exile, Peter II.
Oh, okay.
this state ends up gaining a recognition for the Allies because, I mean, they, like we said before, they proved that they were really good at kicking.
They kicked a lot
Nazi
of ass.
Yeah. So,
Yeah.
in addition, that king in exile, Peter II, had discredited himself because while his people were getting brutally occupied and ethnically cleansed and all this, he was off in a whirlwind romance getting married.
Peter, now's not the time.
That's what, yeah, people were saying, like, are you fucking serious? Like,
We're kind of busy.
I mean, you do you, but like, don't act like you're going to be our king, you know, or like that you, I don't know. It's bad optics, I think.
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
He had to abdicate basically to Tito. He kind of like was very upset about it and didn't want to do this. But his cabinet and everyone, the people who were advising him were like, dude, it's done. Like,
Yeah.
it's over.
This guy won a war. You were busy smooching.
He lives the rest of his life in exile, mostly in the United States. And then on November 11th, 1945, the newly liberated Democratic Federal Yugoslavia have their first parliamentary elections.
All right. How does it go?
The People's Front, which is dominated by the Communist Party, wins by a huge margin.
Hell yeah. They're like, I liked how you kicked that butt.
Well, yeah, it was a little too high.
Uh-oh.
There's kind of the usual controversies over fairness. For their sake, the party does estimate that, or did, I guess none of these guys are around anymore, but they did estimate that they would get around 65% of the vote in a straight up and down sort of thing. But they put their thumb on the scale, I think. In addition to, they shut down some opposition newspapers for what they said inciting foreign intervention. I didn't really read it, but I could imagine, you know, maybe they're like, the British really need to come here and set things straight or put the king in, you know, stuff like that. I could picture it. They also banned Nazi collaborators from participating, which, I mean, that's good, I think.
Yeah,
like,
I'm okay with that.
they don't need to be.
If you're palling around with Nazis, maybe you don't get to vote this time.
The United States did the same thing after the Civil War for a little while. Like, you could not, you know, vote and run for office and things if you were like a Confederate officer and stuff.
That's right.
By the time the election rolled around, in opposition to these kind of, you know, they're like, oh, we're getting bullied and stuff like that. There were some monarchist parties and things.
Oh, yeah.
They boycotted the election. So the People's Front ends up kind of running unopposed because like everyone who's not super reactionary is in this, you know, umbrella group. So they run unopposed with 88% turnout and 90% of the vote.
Holy shit.
So a little too high, I would think.
Yeah. Okay. I'm trying to decide if this is my strike one.
Strike one, rigging the election.
It's not a good look.
I would say I don't think that they rigged it in terms of stuffing the ballots, maybe.
It's more about suppression, which I don't love, but it is Nazis. Okay.
Yeah, and monarchists, but like...
And monarchs, like, fine, you can fucking show up, but like, I get to be mean to you.
Yeah, I mean, if we want to be pretty liberal about it, then you could just like run the election and win. 65% is more than enough to still get your shit done.
Oh, yeah. I guess that's my thing. It's like, if you're estimating, unless you're like fucking Nate Silver just shooting blanks, like...
That's true. Who can even procrastinate? What is that word? Who
prognosticate.
Can even, yeah,
I did it.
Prognosticate. That's a hard word.
It's the crossword, man.
So 10% of the people who vote, all they do is like vote no. They, you know, kind of say like, no, fuck these guys, you know?
They write in someone else's. They write in Henry's name or Peter too.
Yeah. And I didn't look too much in the evidence. There are people who said like that it was one of the secret but not secret kind of ballots. But then some people said it was secret. I don't know. It may have been kind of rigged in that way, you know, or unfair. It's not rigged, but weighted, like we said.
Yeah. Okay. Willing to be proven wrong on that.
Yeah. And plus, just like, I don't know, win fair, you know?
Yeah, like if you had 65.
If you're just going to take power and say we don't need to do democracy for all, I mean, do that. That's fine too, I guess.
I don't know if I love that one, but okay.
Depends on the situation.
I guess.
No, maybe not. I don't know. So the People's Front wins. They eventually rename themselves the Socialist Alliance of Working People of Yugoslavia.
Ooh, I like that.
And that becomes like this long-term, it's the same thing, you know, an alliance of parties, but it's really, really super dominated by the Communist Party, like they're the main guys, and that kind of like increases throughout their history.
It's a good name.
It is. Yeah, that one's not bad. Better than, it doesn't have a parentheses communist. So.
Yeah. They got their shit together long enough to agree on a t-shirt design.
Let's see. On November 29th, 1945, so this is very shortly after those elections, they abolished the monarchy and they established the Federal People's Republic of Yugoslavia.
That sounds good.
Yeah, it's kind of a cool name. And it has 6 constituent People's Republics. So the same countries from before. Now they're People's Republic of this, People's Republic of that.
Okay, so this is just a transition from the provisional government to a more long-term government.
Yes.
Okay, yeah. Gotcha. Because they were federated before, but now they're just like, it's official.
Right, and they're literally in power now.
Yeah.
Before, for a while, they were
in exile or whatever.
In exile / underground, yeah. And so they set out to build their country out of the ashes of World War II.
Okay, how does that go? Sounds like it'll be hard.
Yeah, it is. And I really couldn't find a ton on this time period. I don't know, primary source-wise to like look at stats and figures and things to kind of show specifically what they were doing. I found more generalizations. But generally, it seems like first they kind of moved quickly toward a one-party state, Marxist-Leninist worker state, following a pretty orthodox Soviet-style economic plan. So think like 5-year plan. Right? Like they literally do 5-year plans there for a while. This involves massive government-run public works programs to rebuild their infrastructure, to electrify the countryside, to collectivize agriculture, and to develop heavy industry. Kind of building across the board, and they launch literacy campaigns as well. Education was really bad in the Kingdom of Yugoslavia because it's very unequal. You have a lot of rural areas where people are just straight not going to school. So you're sitting around, it's still around like 50%, I think, at that time. Eventually they get to 91%.
Nice.
So like normal developed country stuff. This sort of rebuilding forms the economic groundwork for what they'll do later. We'll cover more of that in detail in part 2, the whole like Yugoslavia, their interesting economic project. They kind of do, it's not exactly market socialism, but it is this sort of like interesting mixed economy thing.
Okay, cool.
We'll get into more of that in part 2, but this forms the groundwork of it. This is a country that's going to provide, free healthcare for everyone. That's going to provide free education through college for everyone, the right to a job with 1 month's paid vacation, a year of maternity leave.
I want all these things now.
Right?
What the fuck?
They have, affordable public transportation, housing provided, utilities very cheap. This is a country that really, takes off and provides a really good life for people later.
Okay, I have questions.
Yeah.
1, timeline-wise, I guess I was under the impression, maybe this just is also a misunderstanding of the Soviet Union as a system or as like an alliance of countries or something, but like it seems to me that they are taking inspiration from Russia, but not necessarily, they're not like under its control. I mean, they participate in the Comintern, but it's not like there's like a Russian in charge or something, right?
Correct, yeah.
Okay, so is there a point where that changes? Spoilers for next episode, maybe?
In Yugoslavia?
Yeah.
No, they are always in charge of their own destiny.
So that's really interesting because I think the narrative is that like, you talk about Eastern Bloc countries, they make it sound like, Russia has total control over all these areas. And like they're allies, but they're not totally like running those countries. That
is the very simplified kind of, received history we get is just if it's communist, it's dominated by the international communist conspiracy, right? Russia. But we'll see here that there does, like Yugoslavia does for a specific reason end up doing its own thing. Whereas other Eastern Bloc countries, so-called Eastern Bloc countries, do end up following a closer line and like sometimes being directly military intervened by the Soviet Union.
Okay, so it varies from place to place.
Yes.
Okay. My other question when we talk about like kind of these quality of life improvements, literacy and access to education and all those things, is it going to follow kind of a similar urban-rural divide like it did in Russia, where like you generally would have more access to those things in the city compared to rural areas? Like I think this also happened in Afghanistan too.
Yes, I think it's perhaps to a lesser extent than Afghanistan, the same extent as Russia, although you don't have as remote areas there.
It's also smaller.
Yeah, so you don't have as much space to cover. But it's still, in the context of a European country, pretty large.
And it's not like that doesn't happen in capitalism. Like anyone who's lived in a rural area knows, like you have less access to like doctors, that happens there too.
Yeah, and I think for sure it does still end up with a rural-urban divide in that regards, but I do think they also greatly alleviated, the poverty, rural poverty and things.
A lot of immediate suffering. I mean, yeah, you're coming back from Nazis, like pretty hard to get much worse.
Yeah. Even besides comparing it to that, like they are deliberately trying to actively plan and provide for people in the country. Whereas, what is capitalism trying to do? Find ways to make money off of the people in the country.
It's not doing those things.
It's like, and we had, rural electrification because for so long, like power companies would be like, well, we can't make money off of those guys, so we're not going to do it. There's no service there.
Yeah. There's no point.
Here you have a state that's saying, actually, we're going to go and electrify the rural areas and stuff like.
Yeah, exactly.
But yeah, downsides too. They did form a secret police force.
Don't love that. It might be strike two.
State Security Administration, the UDBA. They did some cool things though, like they were not to rep for secret police. That's not my thing.
Your heel turn for the podcast.
Okay, so this is just a little shout out to my buddies that listen in, my CIA guys and everything. You guys don't do this because you suck. But cool secret police people assassinate old fascist war criminals.
Oh, that's fine with me.
You just hunt them down abroad and shoot them or stab them.
I might take away my strike.
But they also do that same like international assassination thing to political dissidents.
Okay, strike is back on.
Yeah, which I didn't look into these guys if they were like just classic like, oh, I just want like free speech liberal stuff, or if it was like, I don't know, very right, like Reagan type.
Just fascist people.
CIA assets or whatnot.
Like, it's just free speech, but I am planning a coup.
Yeah, but I want to give them the benefit of the doubt. I don't want people to just get executed for being annoying.
Yeah.
Like, and these guys may have been like totally cool people. So I did not look into them.
We don't know.
Just kill them,
Generally, still a good idea to be against secret police.
Yeah. That's what I want you to take from this. ACAB, even if they're secret.
Yes. Almost especially so. I'm rewatching The Americans again. I'm just like, how can you watch this and think the FBI are the good guys?
Yeah, it's insane.
So bad. And I think they do a decent job with showing that, but like every time Agent Gat opens his mouth, I just laugh at him.
Yeah. We're going to take these guys down.
Oh, that's a good impression.
Thanks. Watched a lot of Americans.
Oh, I love it. Teaser for maybe a future episode.
Yeah, I got to start rewatching too.
Hell yeah.
They also, did your regular secret police stuff, spying on people, going after potential counter-revolutionary activities, but also, regular political dissonance too. So, mixed bag that I would like to err on the side of don't do.
Yeah, that's strike two, baby.
But on the other hand, devil's advocate, what good does having these freedoms do if people use them to take your country down? That's what the orthodox, Vanguard Party people would say.
My response, as always, is maybe you should make your country better so people don't want to take it down. Convince them how good you're doing.
That's true. Well, I would do most things to fight like the U.S. coming and doing a coup against me, which if you're doing good things, they're going to be trying to come after you.
When does that happen in this story?
Well, we'll get to it eventually.
Okay. Eventually.
Part 2? Yeah, part 2.
Okay.
All right. Now we're going to come to a juncture. Tito and Yugoslavia have freed themselves from the Nazi menace. They did have crucial help from the Soviet Union, like we said, but they had a fully independent army. They were not as much of a junior partner as some of those Eastern European countries were. Like, they got saved by the Soviet Union, whereas Yugoslavia got helped in saving itself. They kind of get to be more independent because of that, self-earned kind of cred, you know? And so Yugoslavia and the Soviet Union soon end up beginning to feud with one another. There had already been some friction during World War II because the Soviets praised the Chetniks as allies for too long. Oh. Eventually, the communists were able to tell them, like, hey, these guys are assholes, and you know.
Yeah, these guys are also ethnic cleansing guys.
But that kind of took too long, and finally the Soviets changed their tune. And the Soviet Union also kind of generally told the partisans to be cautious, not to antagonize the Western allies, not to do too much communism too overtly, you know, like play it down. And that was kind of like, hey, don't tell us what to do, man. You're not my dad, you know.
They're like, maybe put the parentheses back in.
Yeah. So that was some early friction. And then after the war, they start to argue about kind of international relations with varying neighbors of Yugoslavia. Yugoslavia was trying to, it depends on how you read it, trying to expand or trying to ally more closely with its neighbors. Some people emphasize it like, oh, Tito was trying to take some stuff over, like kind of on the sly. And some people say, no, this is more of a forming alliances thing.
Okay. Do you have a read on it, or are you going to keep it nooch? That's neutral.
Yeah. I think I'm going to stay mostly neutral. I think that Tito definitely wanted to build Yugoslavia as a power. Well, we'll get into it. So
I wonder if he had anxiety about the Soviet Union coming to knock on his door, and he's like, I need some friends.
That's definitely part of it, I think.
Yeah. I have a question.
Yeah, go ahead.
I don't know if you know the answer. Is this the fun part of the show for you? Where I just put you on the spot?
Where I'm like, shit, I know I don't have notes on this.
Just start Googling. Okay. Because these two countries are like relatively geographically close, like there's definitely Slavs in Russia, I bet. And I bet, you know, and we know Tito's wife like is Russian. Like, I'm wondering like if there were any prejudices or something, or like almost like ethnic tensions between the two. You know what I mean? I mean, they probably have a similar background-ish, right? Like, I think a lot of people associate, this is a very big simplification, but I'm sure a lot of people associate Eastern European with Russian.
Yeah, so that's more of an American conflation, or or a non-Russian, or a non.
Yeah, I don't know.
Because there are different groups of Slavic people. Maybe East Slavic, South Slavic, West Slavic. The South Slavic, which is Yugoslavia, is like
distinctly different.
Different from, like, if you pull that up on Wikipedia, you'll see like there is a belt above them between the South Slavic and the West and East Slavic, because you have other groups there like Slovenians and the Czech people and I believe the Slovak people as well.
So it's a very like diverse area.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
You know, that's kind of a conflation there on our end. Mm-hmm. You know, lots of people do that. But there is probably, well, I think it comes through in some writings and stuff, if I recall correctly, that so these guys don't do it because I think that they try to be, at least in their writings, international, you know, so they try to not be like, you fucking Russians or whatever, you know, right?
They try not to shit talk.
But they will sometimes like accuse each other of like being chauvinist and saying like, you are, you know, you're saying that Russia's the best, you know, like an asshole sort of thing. Or you're all being nationalist about Yugoslavia, and they'll criticize people on that, but they won't kind of do the reverse and say like, we're cooler than you because we're South Slavs, you know?
Yeah. Okay. So like there's tension, but maybe more in a nationalist way versus like an ethnic way.
Yeah. And I think they, at least in their correspondence with each other, they don't want to be the one doing nationalism. They're kind of like accusing each other of it.
Okay. Yeah. Gotcha.
Because they're communists. So it's like kind of bad, you know?
Yeah, for sure. I'm not into that.
All right. So like we said, Yugoslavia is trying to expand, and the Soviet Union kind of views this as threatening, or at the most charitable reading of it, they kind of think it's ill-advised. I think they more see it as a threat.
I think so too. I think they're like, hey, we were going to do that.
Yeah, but their outward expression is, no, you guys are being unwise. So here are some of the things that kind of throw them off. One is in Albania. So in 1946, this is just south of Yugoslavia, and it was also a socialist country, the People's Republic of Albania. They sign a friendship treaty with Yugoslavia.
That sounds cute.
It's got a cute name, the Treaty of Friendship, Cooperation, and Mutual Aid.
I love that.
Well, yeah, it's kind of an economic integration thing, and they love it at first, but Albania soon starts to feel that it's like trending toward making them dependent on Yugoslavia. Like they're feeling like, these guys are sending advisors in here, and they're trying to get our industry to like just kind of feed theirs, and, making it to where we're not colonized, but, like little brother. So they start kind of arguing, and the Soviets kind of egg that on and take the Albanian side.
This is more of a theory question. We've talked a lot about federated states and like how that can be really good, and like in terms of like an ANCOM or even a communist vision of the future of, we can grow this, and so we'll trade with you who can grow this. What do you do when one region does have more resources than the other? Like, I wonder, like, do you think Albania, like, are they smaller? Did they have fewer resources, or were they like fucked up more from the war? Like, and we don't have to get into the specifics of that, but I'm saying, like, in theory, what do you do when one region just like is better off than another? Like, how do you make those smaller federated places not feel like they're being taken advantage of?
That's a good question. In this case, Albania was smaller. I don't know its natural resource or destruction.
Got any wheat or sheep? What about bricks?
Yeah, right. With the federation structure, especially the more anarchist you get, there's fewer and fewer things you can do to compel anyone to do anything, right? So, your more scarce places are more or less going to remain that way, more or less going to remain a little more Spartan, right? But lots of places aren't, as we talked about in Open Veins, lots of places aren't poor because they're resource scarce.
That's true. That's true.
So if we do manage to make this a global thing and, finally prove the capitalists right by having communists take over the world, then we'll be able to equalize all that out, because nobody's going to be trying to
fuck someone over,
pillage and plunder someplace. Yeah.
Yeah. So there's probably maybe a desert or something. And even then, like, deserts have resources too. Like, it's not like it's a total wasteland. Yeah, you might have some variance in it in terms of like, we don't get a lot of limes here or whatever, but maybe it's less of a pressure because of that. Yeah, I like that idea.
I just found out that the anthem for
Hey Slavs
is Hey Slavs.
I want to hear it. So that's so what we're going to do during our break, is listen to that.
Okay. All right. So drama with Albania. Then in 1946, the People's Republic of Bulgaria, also a socialist state, sign an agreement with Yugoslavia called the Bled Agreement.
Ooh, that one's kind of darker.
Yeah, it's their emo phase.
They went from friendship to bled.
It was just the city it was in.
Okay, gotcha.
And they agreed to unite in the future in kind of a federated state. So Bulgaria is a neighboring country to their east. It was like they kind of didn't have the same vision of it, like Yugoslavia versus Bulgaria, but they were like trying to work that out in the future. And they were like, this will be good. We'll like team up, and be stronger for it.
Once again, what a weird coincidence that so many socialist states are popping off right now. Weird. It's almost like it's cool.
Right? Well, the thing here with the Bled Agreement was that they didn't like talk to the Soviets at all before doing this. And so the Soviets felt like not invited to a party, That's what it comes across. They come out and say like, you should have consulted and we could have advised you that this is not a good idea. But I think it's really that they just did get told. Anyway, the Soviet foreign minister Vyacheslav Molotov goes out and denounces this whole thing and everything, and says, what the fuck were you guys thinking, And then in 1948, things really boil over.
Uh-oh.
with the Greek Civil War.
Oh, okay. I think this is referenced in My Big Fat Greek Wedding, but I think besides that, I don't know anything about it.
Well, to be honest, it's very complicated, and I only know a limited amount related to this. So it had been raging since World War II. The basic story is that the Greek National Liberation Front, led by the Communist Party of Greece, had successfully led the resistance against the Axis occupation. And they basically could have taken power in 1944, or could have tried to, because they occupied most of the country. But they didn't. Stalin, the Soviet Union, advised them not to do so because they didn't want to risk upsetting the Allies while they were fighting World War II, 1944. So instead, Britain sends an expeditionary force. This is an invasion army, ostensibly to aid in disarming the defeated Axis troops there. Mm-hmm. But instead, they crush the communists and establish the right-wing monarchy. They restore it.
Hey, is this when they steal all the fucking art?
I don't know, but
I wouldn't put it past them, I guess is what I'm saying. When I hear the words Britain invades Greece, I'm like, well, not even surprised.
Yeah, I wouldn't be either. So that's in 1944. They just, boom, go in there, kick the door in. Jesus. We're back,
Great.
And by 1946, the Greek communists had been able to rebuild. And then they kind of resume the Greek Civil War, like part 2, or part 3. It's in multiple parts. Yugoslavia and Albania, they support the communists there in Greece, but the Soviet Union continues to stay out of it.
Ugh.
There's different camps. I guess the more charitable reading is that they saw the situation as hopeless, that they thought the Greek Communist Party there were being like adventurist, trying to do a war before its time.
They didn't have the numbers or whatever.
Yeah. And then the less charitable reading is that all along, Stalin's been trying to tell them not to do it and been against it because during World War II, he made an agreement with Churchill to let Greece be their sphere of influence.
Hey, that sucks.
Yeah. So there is a document that Churchill has that they had a secret agreement, but people are unsure if he was just saying that to get cred later and say I kind of saw this whole thing coming,
Stick with me. I know everything. Yeah.
Right. Or
Hindsight.
if it was really for sure a secret agreement or not. For their
Okay.
part, the Soviet Union, when this comes out, they deny that was a thing, but they would. So
Yeah. Why would they admit to that?
yeah. So it's messy. I don't know, but either way, it ends up.
Not a fan.
Yeah, it ends up causing problems. Naturally, these problems were aired out in the group chat.
Oh no, shit got messy.
They got very messy.
Oh.
Stalin sends a letter to Tito and the Yugoslav leadership in general, like the Communist Party leadership there. And he denounces a bunch of them, including Tito. He says, and this is not just Stalin, I should say, but like the Politburo. They kind of put this together. So you just imagine they're all in the room, kind of arguing about the different parts. Should we really call him an asshole?
Oh my gosh. Yeah, they put him on blast. They try to cancel him.
Yeah, they call them dubious Marxists.
Ooh, okay. That's a good band name.
Yeah. And they talk shit about various policies, just like how you're running your party sort of thing.
What the fuck?
And they also, this is the part I love, they start complaining about alleged prior shit talking that they've heard about.
They get really petty. Oh my God.
It is some messy drama. So here's a literal quote. I just love that these exist. Quote, "We know that there are anti-Soviet rumors circulating among the leading comrades in Yugoslavia. For instance, that the CPSU, the Communist Party of the Soviet Union, is degenerate. Or great power chauvinism is rampant in the USSR. Or the USSR is trying to dominate Yugoslavia economically." And so on and so on. They're just saying, we heard what you said about us. You better stop.
Wow. That is amazing. I love that people were idiots even back then.
Yes, it's great.
All right, let's take a break.
Take a break and listen to Hey Slavs.
Yeah. Damn, I just listened to that anthem.
It's pretty good.
Really, I mean, it was like a very classic kind of almost like a march, but like the lyrics were super metal.
It was an old, like it was pre, it wasn't like the communists came up with it, basically.
Yeah. I'm a fan.
That's our review. Okay, as Americans cannot criticize like anyone's national anthem.
No, ours is super ridiculous.
Ours was an old British bar song, like pretty bad.
Yeah, we stole it, and also it was written during like the War of 1812, which everyone agrees is the most boring war.
And also we basically lost it, like we
the
celebrate
one
that
we
we
lost.
survived it.
Yeah. No, I'm into that the Slavic song. Cool lyrics, very metal. In vain the fire of thunder. Like, this sounds like a fucking Lord of the Rings book.
That's pretty good, yeah. In vain threatens the abyss of hell.
Yeah, that's fucking metal.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. May he be damned, the traitor of his homeland.
That's strong words.
Just go for it. All right. Where were we?
Pettiness, petty fighting.
So this letter comes in. Stop talking shit about us. They exchange letters. It's a back and forth. Yugoslavia denies it. They say, yo, I thought we were friends. Don't insult us, bro. And then Stalin replies with, oh, yeah, well, maybe we should take this up with the Cominform. Let's let them decide who's right. All of us.
Okay.
So the Cominform is like the successor to the Comintern.
Okay, yeah, I hadn't heard that word before.
It's just kind of a different version of it. It's called the Information Bureau of the Communist and Workers' Party.
That sounds way nerdier.
It's like an alliance of the parties or whatever, basically. It's not its own political party.
Okay, whereas the Comintern is a political party?
Well, the Comintern was the Third International, but they're more or less the same thing, I want to say.
Okay,
Like
rebrand.
Yeah, it's more of a rebrand. I'm sure a real communist can tell you more of the details of how they're different.
This fucking shithead
But,
who
yeah.
runs a communist podcast, not a real communist.
No real communist. Yeah. Cominform.
Yes.
So
They go to daddy.
Stalin was like, let's do that, right? Let's bring it. Yeah, let's tell dad. And Tito says, nah, man, you're just going to try to rig that. You're going to get all the parties against me.
You're the real dad. Like, yeah.
So, yeah, we're not doing that. It's no fair.
Yeah, I wouldn't think that's fair either, honestly.
Probably not. Yeah, I mean, I imagine that. And then, but then again, you got to
They're
have some
huge.
sort of organization of these international political parties to hold, to decide things between each other.
I mean, I assume, maybe this is a bad assumption, I assume everybody in the Cominform / Comintern has an equal vote. Is that true?
I don't know how they ran things, to be honest.
It's okay. I mean, if that were the case, even so, like, just the Soviet Union had so much power within that like, it just, I feel like they could just tell other countries what to do. But maybe not.
Yeah, so, okay, here's something. Not intended to be a replacement or successor to the Comintern, the international organization. It was considered a type of successor. It was not a world communist party, didn't have subordinates or power, limiting itself to just kind of like publishing stuff and coordinating, like organizing things between separate communist parties. It's like a club, but not like they could really do anything to you.
Yeah, okay. That makes sense.
So I guess it's different in that way. I don't know. I would agree in function that most parties, including Yugoslavia to some degree, like looked to, admired the Soviet Union, like wanted to be on good terms. And you can tell that in these letters. I'm kind of phrasing the worst of it, but like they do try to be cordial, like, yo, I'm not trying to fight you, but, sort of thing. And you can tell that like they would really rather not be having this argument, but neither side is really also willing to back down. So the Soviet Union sends them an invite to the Cominform and kind of a threat along with it saying, basically don't show up and you're admitting you're guilty.
Wow, that's super petty too.
Yeah. The Communist Party of Yugoslavia said, yeah, we're going to be busy watching paint dry. Like, we're not going.
Fuck right off.
Yeah.
Okay, so to be clear, I just want to make sure I'm getting the narrative right. It sounds like the USSR was uncomfortable with with how much power Yugoslavia had and the alliances they were making. And so, but they kind of started the shit with that first letter, though.
Yeah.
Unless all of their rumors they heard were true. Which, again, that's hilarious.
It seems like they do get information from some party members in Yugoslavia who are like kind of ratting on them, you know? And that'll turn into a problem later.
Uh-oh, I bet.
But this is, they're kind of the ones stirring up the shit. And I don't think it was just about the foreign policy. I think there was also like, we're uncomfortable, like, we think you're running the party wrong and you're making mistakes and this sort of thing. But I do think that it's more of a rivalry. It's more of a
power struggle.
Yeah, that's how it comes across. Now, there could have been like genuine, and what Stalin tries to do in this and what the Soviets try to do in their portrayal is say, we have ideological differences. They try to make it kind of like theory based somewhat in parts of it, but I'm doubtful as to whether that was the real motivating factor. Like, who gets in a super big fight about that at this stage?
Yeah, why wouldn't you just be like, end of sentence, we're done? Like, that's fine.
Yeah.
That's not a reason to start shit.
That's a fight to pick when you're still doing your book club circles.
Yeah,
stage,
that's when you're just chilling by the fireplace with a glass of brandy. You can have those arguments then. You don't need to start fucking, international disagreements over it. Like, and I don't know, like it just comes across as very patronizing too. When they're like, oh, like, I don't think you're ready to make alliances with people yet. And it's like, man, whatever. Like,
yeah. And that's,
I don't know.
Yugoslavia was seeing it that way for sure. With that, at the Cominform meeting on June 28th, 1948, the Cominform boots the Communist Party of Yugoslavia right out of the club.
Okay, shit.
They accuse them of anti-Sovietism, ideological errors, a lack of democracy in the party, an inability to accept criticism, a very funny thing to accuse someone of.
I love that. I'm going to kick you out of my club because you don't let me talk shit about you. Wow.
Opposing other parties in the organization, trying to split the unified Socialist Front, and betraying the international solidarity of the working people, and being nationalist.
Whoa. Those are some heavy accusations.
Yep.
I don't like that.
They say, fuck these guys. Look at what all they did. They're not really communists. Get out.
Okay. I'm not getting strikes for the Soviet Union, but that would be a strike. Just saying.
They also said, to kind of soften the blow / try to stir up shit, they said, now there are probably some pretty good loyal party members in Yugoslavia who could totally prove that loyalty by overthrowing Tito and these terrible leaders.
God, that's so fucked up.
Yeah, it's not good.
Ugh, okay. I mean, for context, this is Stalin, and I'm generally not a fan of him.
All right, so this big mess is called the Tito-Stalin split.
Yeah, okay. Another split. It's about time.
Right, things were going too well, so we had to have a split. It has far-reaching implications for Yugoslavia and the global communist project overall.
Yeah, that's a rough one.
Yeah, for one, the Greek Civil War we were talking about.
Oh, yeah.
The Greek Communist Party decides to stay loyal to the Soviet Union in the split. Yugoslavia gets pissed about that and closes their borders to them. They had been helping them all along, even though the Soviet Union was staying out, And so they're like, fuck you guys. You didn't have our backs there.
Oh, that sucks, because they were probably like taking in refugees and shit, too.
Yeah, this leads the Greek Communist Party to start doing like purges against their guys. Like they're trying to get rid of Titoites, they're calling them,
Now is not the time.
So yeah. It wasn't the time. The rebellion falls apart pretty quickly.
Yeah, I know fucking shit.
So they lose their best friend and then turn on themselves. In Yugoslavia, the party refused to surrender to the Cominform. They were like, fuck it, we got kicked out, whatever. There was clearly some support for Stalin in the party, though. Some people were like, what if we did get rid of Tito? Like some people kind of said, oh yeah, they got a good point. Like we are doing some fucked up stuff. And then this leads to something called the Informbiro period, which is where the party tries to hunt down suspected sympathizers with Stalin and the Cominform.
I don't think I'm going to like this.
Yeah, it gets to be sort of a mini purge of their own. Not so many. Thousands of people do get registered. It's something like 50,000 people get registered within a couple years as Cominformists. That's like 20%, 19.5% of party members.
So when you say registered, do you mean like registered?
Some people, yeah. So it's again a spectrum here. So some people get jailed. Some people get sent to forced labor camps. Some people get just executed or sentenced to death. Again, it's, a
Mixed
mixture.
bag.
Some people just get kicked out of the party. Most of them who were sentenced without a trial. And they even, to kind of save space, or they didn't have enough prisons or something, they reused some of the old concentration camps that they had from back in the fascist times. So in the email talking about that, cruel communist dictator, this is some of the cruelties that were visited upon people who were perceived as enemies, but
they weren't.
They are just communists who disagreed.
Yeah, fuck that.
Similar to Stalin's Great Purges here, this is different, and I think on a really smaller scale, but not good. They also build some prisons. The most infamous one is like on this barren island off the coast called Goli Otok, which sounds like something from Mordor. So
I was gonna say it sounds Klingon, but
oh yeah,
we're both nerds, just in different ways. Guys, we're not even to part 2. This is my 3rd strike. He's striking out.
See, yeah.
Don't defend this one. Come on.
No, I'm not going to defend this one.
The secret police one. What was the first one? I guess it wasn't that bad. I can't remember.
The first one was partisans. They execute some people after they have the revolutionary terror.
Oh, I don't care about that. I'm fine with some revolutionary terror. Yeah, whatever.
Oh, no. Hey, no. The elections.
The elections.
You didn't like the elections because
I didn't like that. All right. I'm going to now write these down so we don't have the same conversation in like 30 minutes. Okay. Strikes for Tito. And this will be in handy for next week too.
My only argument is that people oftentimes do really like good things, but also shitty things. And
oh, yeah.
It's like cool to like their cool thing. I don't know. The whole striking out thing feels like canceling to me, which is kind of silly.
No, I'm not actually trying to cancel this guy. I think it's a fun game.
Yeah, that's fair. So it's not like 3 strikes and you're out. It's just like, let's see who gets the most strikes.
I don't think he's out. I think it's just like, hey, these are the things I would not have been a fan of.
Yeah.
I wrote election, secret police, purge time.
Purge time. Okay. Yeah, okay, so they're facing, this, and they're also facing genuine, like, attempts to bring them down.
Stalin was like, wink, wink, please get rid of this guy.
Yeah, there's an attempted coup that fails. There's some insurrections that fail. The Soviet Union, they really go all out, man. So they set up an obnoxiously named group. All right?
Oh, God. What is it?
How many names do you think that this is a long name? How
many words?
Yeah.
6.
Way more.
Oh my God.
League of Yugoslav Patriots for the Liberation of the Peoples of Yugoslavia from the yoke of the Tito Rankovic clique and imperialist slavery.
It kept going.
Yeah. It's great.
That's a paragraph. I was going to say that's a sentence, and then it turned into a paragraph.
So they were like an exile opposition group with, again, a very obnoxious.
That sucks. Obnoxious purpose and name.
Well, see, so what does it make you think of? Because they have that. They start Radio Free Yugoslavia to broadcast into anti-Tito propaganda from Hungary.
This sounds like some United States bullshit.
It sounds like what we're doing to Cuba, basically, right? Like, trying to overthrow them and at least they were doing so from a different socialist, like at least they weren't trying to do that, but.
Intentions, whatever, you can pave that road to hell. Like, especially the idea of like, oh, this is a localized rebellion, like that kind of branding of like, oh, this is really coming from the inside. We're just publicizing it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah. Ugh, that's nasty. Don't like it.
On the other hand, they think that they're right. I mean, they think that Tito is really fucking things up.
Is he fucking things up? Do we have any evidence he was fucking things up?
It does depend who you... Well, not at that time, really. I mean, their criticisms were, like we just explained, you know, nationalism or whatever, and...
I don't think he's being nationalist. I think the opposite. I think he's making alliances with other places. He wants federated places. Like, that's not nationalist at all.
I think that they were more suspicious, though. They thought that they saw the worst in that. And you know, maybe he would have kind of turned that to his advantage and done something. But I don't know. This is pretty bad to do to a fellow socialist state. Like, at least, I mean, you know, try to keep an open mind. Like,
best intentions.
Yeah, they're socialists. Like, they're broadly speaking on your side.
Yeah, I don't see what they're so fucking scared of. Like, if anything, I mean, not to be like part of the petty letters here, which that's what I'm calling those letters now, the petty letters. It sounds like they're the ones being called nationalists because they're the ones who want all the power and to control everything, and they clearly do because they're able to kick them out of the common firm. So, like, fuck off. Like,
yeah, so you're very much falling on the Yugoslavia side.
I'm on the Yugoslavia side.
All right. The kind of the last concluding thing here that kind of leaves the cliffhanger for next time.
Oh, okay.
The most important result of the Tito-Stalin split, in my opinion, I guess, one historian's opinion, is how they deal with getting blockaded by their former communist allies.
Oh, okay.
The Eastern Bloc and the Soviet Union and everybody, so-called Eastern Bloc, they all cut off Yugoslavia. And this is what we'll get into our next episode, because it really changes their trajectory a whole lot in terms of domestic reforms of their economy and stuff, and in terms of the international scene too.
Yeah, because you can't do a lot of like economic pool guide plans when you're being blockaded.
Or can you?
Oh, next time on Yugoslavia. I'm picturing like, you know, kind of the more... Because I feel like next time ones, like the teasers used to give away everything. Be like, so-and-so gets married. And now it's like a Mad Men one, especially, it's like somebody looks over their shoulder dramatically.
Yeah.
Anyway.
What are your thoughts? I know we got into some of them already.
I shared my thoughts freely. I'm not a fan of the split. I'm not a fan of like most splits, unless it's like a cool dance move. It's just frustrating. It's hard for me to see this as anything other than a power grab. And you could make the argument it's a power grab from either side. So I'm just like, guys, what are we doing here? Like, again, I wish we had a safe word of just like, hey, I'm still on your side. It's cool. Yeah. We're not capitalists. I don't see a point in starting this shit over like, we have different like ideological things. Like, but don't start a fight over theory to this level. Like, that just seems crazy town.
Capitalists don't do that. They know how to just keep that shit over there, put it in the newspapers, but like they don't have that problem. I mean, they do get into their imperialist bullshit and massacre the working class in that way.
They do bad things from it. But that is a good point about like the media that kind of serves as like an outlet for those kinds of frustrations. And like, yeah, I'm like, yeah, you can be mad at each other and like, I don't know, kind of give each other some shit. But like, it just escalated so quickly over what I didn't feel were very true accusations, or if they were true, not big enough of a deal to like break up the party in this way.
Yeah. And I see in the interior of their mind, like, I can tell why someone could do, these things and come to like the worst conclusions. I get it. But I think we're both saying the same thing with like, I wish people could step back, we could go back in history, tell them, hey, yo, step back. Like, don't fly off the handle, like you said, we are on the same side, man.
You're on the same side. Like, one of you likes a different book more than the other one likes a different, like, chill. Like, why do we have to do this?
Yeah, and again, I do think it was really more that rivalry. But all the same, guys, like we, collectively, we're going to be better off if somebody takes this one for now and somebody else takes the next one. Like, or, like I'm not saying take over the country, but like, come to a deal here that works for somebody, works for the people there. What do they want? And then we'll, make sure everyone's taken care of going for, like, we're besieged by the rest of the imperialist countries. Like, come on.
Like, instead of bitching about their alliances, like, why don't you join their alliances? Like, that sounds good. You'd probably be into that. I don't get it.
Then again, the Soviets say, why don't you join us, bro? We're bigger.
So what? You don't understand our problems the way we do. Like, I'm very pro-federated. Like, that's the way to do it, IMO.
There you go.
Okay, so we're doing this next week. So if you're at your keyboard right now, like, excuse me, you didn't cover XYZ. Maybe we'll get to it next week.
Yeah, next week we'll pick up where we left off and talk about how Yugoslavia charts a, non-Soviet supported way forward, and take that all the way to its probably related disintegration in 1992.
I mean, I knew the spoiler ending of, they're not around anymore.
Yeah.
But I am worried at this point in the story. I can't see it going well from here.
We'll see. I mean, it's an interesting tale. It's a rise and a fall.
Okay. Great.
All right. Bye.
Bye. Hey there, comrades. Just jumping in to remind you of all of our social media. We are on Twitter at teachcommunism, Instagram at teachmecommunism. You can shoot us an email. That's teachmecommunism@gmail.com. Any of those places are good to send us an episode suggestion or a question, anything you think would be useful feedback for us, or just your admiration. If you want to admire us in a public manner, and you should, you can go to Apple Podcasts to give us a review. It is the best way to help people find the show. Love when people rate and review us. Please do both. We are also on YouTube, if that's how you prefer to listen to podcasts, or if you know someone that's the only way they'll listen to podcasts, send them to our page. And we have a Patreon. For $5 a month, you get access to our notes for each week's episode, including the backlog of notes, which is a very handy resource for up-and-coming commies. And at the end of the year, all of the funds from Patreon will be given to local mutual aid in the DFW area. So, ain't going to line our pockets. Finally, we have merch. Check us out at TeePublic. You can find shirts and I believe also stickers and magnets and all kinds of fun stuff with catchphrases from the show or episode art, stuff like that. The link to that store is in the show notes, so check that out. Okay, that's all the internet. Join us next time for another episode of Teach Me Communism, where the class struggle is always in session. Bye, y'all.